It is collapsing. Check it out.
This breaking news where a New York judge has postponed the sentencing of Donald Trump over hush money payments to Stormy Daniels until September the 18th. The former president and current challenger pushed for the delay after the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity. James.
September the 18th. We are living in some crazy, crazy time. The Democrats must be going crazy, losing their minds. Then now we're going to have to wait till September 18th. That's what, 2 months before the actual election? It's a wrap, man. He got this.
Matthews reports this morning from Washington, D.C.
They said that in some circumstances, a president can enjoy immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts. Within hours of that ruling, Trump's lawyers contacted the New York court and said, well, hang on a minute, given this change in the law, that changes the circumstances of his conviction. They think they have an opportunity to overturn that hush money conviction because evidence was presented to the jury during that trial that related to Trump's time in office. There were tweets, paperwork, public statements made about Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, and others whilst he was in office. They're saying,
for a minute there, I thought that Trump was going to go to jail in July. July 11th was the actual date that they were going to send him to jail. But now switching it to September, man, life is good.
To the judge, they think they have a case for this conviction to be set aside because these were official acts. And under this new immunity law, Donald Trump should be immune. It is an early test of this new immunity law, Sarah Jane, and this newfound empowerment of a president for critics of the change in the law. And there are many, they are widespread in this country. It will be an opportunity when this goes through this New York court, when it's heard, these arguments are heard, an opportunity to calibrate the risk as they would see it to democracy and the rule of law. So September the 18th is a new date for the sentencing. It's good news for Donald Trump politically, if nothing else. He was due to be sentenced next week, 4 days before the Republican National Convention. That will now not be the case. It was looming large over that convention, but for the Republican on a roll, a man who's amassing results, over the course of the past days and weeks with TV debates and so on. Good news for now, although prosecutors, they make the point that they think his lawyer's argument is without merit.
Trump got the best lawyers. They just pushed it out to September 18th. What a time to be alive. The Democrats must be losing their minds. As it goes to show that money runs things. So Trump got the best lawyers that money can't buy. But I just had to celebrate the fact that Donald Trump won't be going to jail to September 18th. And even then, he's going to have so many people supporting him that they cannot send him to jail. Because the minute's about to win. September 18th is when they're going to sentence him. September 10th is the second debate. And man, Trump is going to take over that debate. It's going to be ridiculous. Crazy, crazy time to be alive. But welcome to Verbal on Life. My name is Noel, battling MS, and I just had to talk about the fact that our boy Donald Trump won't be going to jail in July. He's going to jail in September, which, as a matter of fact, they won't be sending him to jail. It's impossible. Because the man is way too famous for that. And then you have the Supreme Court justice. Check this out.
For more on this, let's go to our chief political analyst, John Dickerson, and CBS News legal analyst, Ricky Kleeman. Good morning to both of you. We're going to talk to you, John, in a moment about the presidency and what this means. But first, the legal cases that Trump is facing. What now, Ricky?
Well, Jan just mentioned New York. Looking to stop the conviction, to overturn it and not be sentenced is ridiculous. So let's look at the January 6th case. The January 6th case is the case that went up to the Supreme Court. What is going to happen here is a matter of procedure. It is
Trump was the president, and therefore he can't go to jail.
Going to get kicked back down to the district court. That's Judge Tanya Chutkan. Judge Chutkan is going to have a hearing on every act that is in this indictment. Keep in mind, this indictment is 45 pages. It has 128 paragraphs in it. And of them, 123 are acts. So what Judge Chutkan is going to do is go one by one after they brief the
One by one is going to take forever. So there's going to be no court cases this year.
issue for her and hear arguments, and she's going to make a decision and say, well, this act is not official. This act is private. And there I will say, I think without fear of contradiction, understanding Judge Chutkan, who is prompt, who is precise, who is smart, and found that there was absolutely no immunity, that about 95% of this case, she is going to say is ready for trial.
That 5%.
Nope, it won't happen like that because Trump is going to win and you can't send a president to jail.
Is a big deal, right? So a key part of the interference allegations, and I think a disturbing aspect of the Supreme Court ruling for a lot of people, is that Donald Trump's efforts to pressure his vice president not to certify the election will be an official act and therefore not prosecutable.
No,
Yep.
wrong. It's
No?
the Justice Department conversations. They are definitely not prosecutable. The question of the conversations with Mike Pence to stop the certification, they may be presumptively official, but I would still think Judge Chutkan will find that the government
Presumptively official. What the hell is she talking about? She's way wrong. This woman is retarded.
can overcome the presumption, and they're going forward. What's the problem here is delay, because they're all going to be appealed.
John, can you put this in perspective about what it means historically? Because many people are sitting here thinking the guardrails have now come off. What does this mean?
So we have to
The
separate
larger
it
picture.
in a few different ways. There's the office of the presidency. Forget who's in the office. There have been debates about the power of the president and the executive and what kinds of powers the executive needs to act with dispatch.
The president got power. You cannot send the man to jail, period.
Those arguments were going on pretty much right after they finished the Constitution 234 years ago in that hot summer in Philadelphia. In that regard, this basically gives more power to the presidency, but that's a kind of an abstract debate about the presidency. What does it mean with respect to Donald Trump? Well, it means what Ricky was just talking about. There are specific ways in which it'll affect this case about his participation in January 6th. But then there's the third part, which is the biofeedback. How is he going to receive this news? And if he is to be elected again, how's he going to operationalize it?
If he's elected again, he's going to cancel all of it. That's it. No more trial, no more messing with Trump.
We've seen him already claim that this gets him out of the New York case, which is a stretch and a ridiculous reading of the Supreme Court. But if he's president, he's likely to read this ruling as a kind of all guardrails are off. And why do we think that? Three reasons. One, we have the testimony of his former officials who said much of our time was spent telling him you can't do that, it's illegal. He's likely to think, you know what, I know how to get around this. The second thing is when presidents are given power, they rarely say, you know what, I'm not going to use it. And the third thing is if you believe in politics, that if you have the power, you can do what you want, well, he's likely, and those who support him are likely to read this ruling as saying, if you have the power and it's part of your job, then go ahead and do what you want.
But John,
He could do whatever he want with the power of the presidency. We're talking about sending up the SEAL Team 6 to go get all the enemies locked up.
said this even before the ruling. So how should that he has the power? How should voters process this?
They should, and I'll go back to what I've been talking about for years.
We should all vote for Trump. We need that man with the mantle. We need the man to take care of the country.
They should think of this as an office that requires the occupant to have a certain level of character. Because when you're given extreme power, it comes down to you and your character and whether
The most power goes to Trump. Let's do this.
you will use that power wisely and in a restrained fashion in the job. And that goes to not just these questions.
The wise thing to do is to fire everybody in the FBI and everybody in the CIA. You're fired. CIA, you're fired.
Questions that are a part of this ruling, but more broadly in the job. Character means two things. One, do you care about people other than your base? Because you're president of the whole country. And what that means is, are you going to do things that are going to help the most number of people? And the second part of character means, do you recognize there are long-term consequences for your behavior? It's not just what's going to help you and what's going to help you in the short term, but that you are in a job that requires that you think about the future. And
the man was already president for 4 years and he didn't do nothing crazy. But this time, we're talking about SEAL Team 6 coming in for everybody.
Putting character back in focus on the job is a good thing for an election, and it's what everybody should be talking about.
Yeah, well, given the ruling, the convictions, the upcoming election, this is very layered. Thank you for breaking it all down. We appreciate you. Could be talking about this the entire show, actually.
Yes.
Could be, yeah.
But thank you. We'll check back in with you later.
They forgot to say Trump 2024. And whenever they finish talking, that's what everybody should be saying. Trump 2024. Let's do this. We got to fix this country. And the only man that identified with the regular man is Trump. That's insane. A billionaire identifying with the regular people. Man, Democrats have nothing left. They can't do anything. And look at this. The Supreme Court gives Trump presidential immunity. That's gangster.
Now to the landmark Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity. Senior national correspondent Tara Moran is at the Supreme.
And it makes sense. Some immunity. That's right. You got to make decisions, but he doesn't want to be scared of making decisions.
Supreme Court. And Terry, this is an earth-shaking opinion. Huge implications for the presidency and former President Trump.
It sure is, George. Good morning. This is one for the history books. Never before had the Supreme Court decided whether presidents could be prosecuted. And now in this case, they've answered that question by making it much, much harder to hold presidents, including Donald Trump, accountable for their crimes.
What about all the other presidents? If you do it for Trump, that means you got to prosecute everybody. Come on now. These people are acting stupid.
This morning, a landmark Supreme Court decision that reshapes the presidency and hands Donald Trump an enormous legal win. For the first time in history, the court has declared that presidents can never be prosecuted for acts within their core constitutional duties and are presumed to be immune from prosecutions for much of their other official actions. Overnight, President Biden warned that the conservative majority on the court has set a, quote, dangerous precedent.
Any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law.
Trump declared victory within minutes of this ruling, posting on social media, "Big win for our Constitution and democracy. Proud to be an American." The decision comes in the criminal case brought by special counsel Jack Smith against Trump for his alleged conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election, including January 6th. The question, can presidents be prosecuted for their actions in office? In a 6-3 decision, the court siding almost entirely with Trump. Chief Justice John Roberts writing, "The president may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers and is entitled at a minimum to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts." So those core powers, the ones specifically mentioned in the Constitution, pardons, vetoes, the duties of commander-in-chief, and more, can never be prosecuted.
Nope. No president can be in fear that if he makes a decision, he's going to get prosecuted afterwards. So this only makes sense, and it should be making sense to everybody. Otherwise, all presidents are going to get prosecuted. We're talking about putting Obama in jail. Who else? Bush, Biden. Everybody's going to go to jail if you fear making decisions that people don't like.
All other official acts, the ruling declares, are presumed to be beyond the reach of the criminal law. But the court also held presidents can be prosecuted for unofficial and personal acts. Roberts writing, "Not everything the president does is official. The president is not above the law." Now the case goes back down to the lower court judge in Trump's case, who must sift through the evidence, separating out official and unofficial conduct, to see if the prosecution of Trump can even go forward under this decision. That'll take time, all but certainly pushing the case past the November election, a key win for Trump.
You cannot allow a president to be out there without immunity.
But the court's 3 liberal justices seemed stunned. Just
those 3 women, Democrat women, we got to just learn to ignore them. They got problems. They got issues. They're pretending like they don't know how to read. Like those 3 women chosen by the Democratic Party to just help destroy this country, it's insane.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor declaring in dissent, the president is now a king above the law. She painted a grim vision of what...
And it's so messed up that she put out that statement. That's the stupidest statement you could make. And she's acting like it's her first time being a judge. She's been in this country for all her life, so she knows better.
What this ruling could mean for presidential power. orders the Navy SEAL team.
You know, I met her once. She didn't shake my hand. She didn't want to. But look at it. SEAL Team 6? What kind of stupid statement is this?
Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune. Immune.
You know what this means? That Biden is probably going to go ahead and lock up everybody, and he's immune. So Trump, watch your back, because Biden might just send SEAL Team 6 to come pick you up.
She concluded, with fear for our democracy, I dissent.
She is so fake. Like, come on now, you're not even supposed to be making those stupid statements. You're not even supposed to be political. You're supposed to be a judge, a fair judge. That is the most disingenuous statement you could put out. Like, I'm not a fan anymore. Somebody needs to be impeached. She needs to be impeached. So AOC, go out there and pick this woman up. Because look at the statement that she's putting out there. That you could, as a president, can make any decision and you're immune. What are you trying to say to Biden?
Legal scholars have just begun to reckon with the impact of this ruling and how future presidents, including perhaps Donald Trump, will wield the immense powers of that office virtually free from any worry that they're breaking the law.
They're forgetting Biden is the president right now.
Okay, Terry, thanks. Let's bring our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. Terry just said legal analysts are trying to parse through what this all means. It has the makings of one of the most consequential decisions in the history of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean, look, we expected that this court was going to say to a lower court, you figure out what's an official act and what isn't, right? And official acts will be protected. What makes this so sweeping is that the court has said, A, that
if you notice, all the men and one woman are the ones that went ahead and said, yes, immunity.
some acts do have total and absolute immunity. And the court actually refers to...
Let me just press on that for a second, because one of the core constitutional powers given to the president is the power to pardon. Some billionaire gives him $500 million for a pardon. He can't be prosecuted.
Well, no, he cannot. That's right. He got the power to pardon anybody and everybody. Why is this the first time you're bringing it up? Like, all the presidents do this.
Potentially. They may say that some of that has the presumption of immunity as opposed to absolute immunity.
That's a core power.
It may be a core power. That may be one of the arguments, is that the pardon power is something, when it says core, it means exclusively to the president.
Written in
right?
the Constitution.
Right. Not something that Congress also has the power to do. Pardoning is one of those core powers. And the court has said, in sending it back, you can't look to the president's motive in assessing a potential crime.
Nope.
So if you can't look to the motive in something like a pardon, you can't say, were they doing this for the wrong reasons? Then there's certainly an argument to be made along those lines. But part of what makes this so sweeping is also the fact that they have implemented a series of rules that any prosecutor has to abide by, meaning all the things they can't do in evaluating whether a president committed a crime, evidence that they can't use. They can't look to a president's motive. They can't use presidential testimony or the testimony of advisors, et cetera, in assessing it. And that's what makes it, as a practical matter, so difficult.
And as a practical matter, what does it mean for Jack Smith's case?
I'm glad they're letting social media talk, because this is insane.
Against former President Trump.
It's going to be tough. It's certainly going to restrict his case. Now, Jack Smith is going to come back and say, we think that we can overcome the presumption of immunity. Remember, two separate issues, the absolute immunity on parts of it, but the presumption of immunity on other parts. And when it comes to a presumption of immunity, you can overcome that. You can present evidence to say, okay, yes, there's this presumption that something's immune, but we have enough evidence to overcome that.
Dan Abrams, thanks very much.
you. This is my last night in Australia. I've been here 2.5 weeks. This is my 7th city, and I'm just absolutely in love with your country, and I mean that. And I will be back. I've spent my whole life thinking about coming here. I'm 55, so that's like 50 years. And I grew up in a country that just idolized Australia. We just loved it. Everything about. I grew up in a surf community. We thought you're surfers, all of whom were named Shane, I think, at the time. We thought they were the coolest. We thought all of your women were like Elle Macpherson. Like every woman in Australia looks like Elle Macpherson. And that everybody in Australia is attacked by some sort of deadly animal every day of the week and thinks nothing of it. And that's all kind of true, I've decided. It's all sort of true. It's the most beautiful country I've ever been to, the most lightly populated. And it has functional cities, which is something I'm not used to at all. You know, in where I live, it's like, it's incredibly beautiful, but you have to escape the cities. Here you go to the cities and they're great. You're like, I could live here if I could afford it, which I can't. I love your profanity, not all of which I understand, but it's used liberally. Words we don't have, I'm not going to repeat them. I repeated them the other night to people like, oh, that's a bad word. I was like, we don't even have that word. I have no idea what it means. It's like swearing in Mandarin. It doesn't offend me, you know? And I think I, above all, like, if I'm being honest, this is a little syrupy, but I'm leaving tomorrow, so I'll just be honest. But I love how much you love animals. I just love that. And it's a very Anglo quality. It's part of the culture that we share, you know, all derived from the UK. But I've never seen it at this scale. And before I came here, I mean, I had heard a million accounts of many people who would come here who would say, you know, that old cliche about how every animal in Australia is looking to kill you. That's all true. And the Australians aren't bothered by it. That turns out to be true also. But it's deeper than that. I thought it was just bravery and sort of devil-may-care nonchalance, which is clearly true, but it's also like such a profound love of animals. The other night, 2 nights ago, we were having dinner and people were telling me about your magpies and how they dive bomb people. And this woman said, I didn't know if this was like one of those drop bear or hoop snake stories designed to like scare the foreigners, or I didn't know if they were being serious, because in my country, magpies are just chirpy birds, but here they're deadly. And she's telling me how the mailmen, posties, I think she called them, wear helmets with spikes on top to keep the birds off. And I'm like, that's not real. Oh, it's totally real. And then she shows me videos of it. I'm like shocked by the whole thing. And then she goes, you know, they're highly intelligent. I was like, yeah, you should shoot them. And then you just kill like the first year's worth, and all the other magpies will get together and be like, let's leave the mailman alone, you know, because they're smart. This woman looked at me like I was a child molester or a freak. She's like, shoot them? No. And I said, you know, in my country, I mean, I love animals. I live with animals, but I also hunt birds. But our rule is, if the animal's trying to kill you, that's a violation of the creation contract as outlined in Genesis 2, which is you have dominion over them. Like, they're not, you know, we can all live kind of peacefully together, but if you try and kill me, then I have to, you know, fight back. And having free will and opposable thumbs, like, I'm going to win. And this woman looked at me, honestly, like I was a monster. Like, no. And then that reminded me of a conversation I had the week before where this guy's telling me how he found a brown snake in his garage. And I was like, the brown snake, like the world famous, like second most poisonous snake in the world? He goes, yeah. And I thought, if I found a brown snake in my garage, well, I'd burn the garage down, obviously, immediately. I just toss a cup of gasoline in there and torch it. It's well worth it, insured or not. And then I'd call the army to kill all the other, I mean, brown snakes don't live alone. They're produced by other brown snakes. And obviously, we need to commit brown snake genocide just for our own survival. I said, and I'm not joking at all. And I said, what'd you do? He goes, my wife tossed me a broom and I shoot it out. And he wasn't kidding at all. And I realized these are people who love animals so much that killing them is like not only a last resort, it's like kind of horrifying. It's horrifying. And I thought, what a wonderful and true reflection of the character of the country, because love of animals is the beginning of decency, because you have control over animals. They're a version of children. Unlike children, if you mistreat your kids, like they turn 18 and they hate you and they go on a campaign against you and become drug addicts. But animals, you can do whatever you want to them And there's nothing they can ever do. And so that is the measure of who you really are, how you treat the defenseless, the helpless, people or animals for whom you're responsible. You have dominion over them. You're responsible for them, in some cases their care, and that increases your responsibility to be kind and decent to them. And so I really think that is the clearest picture of who you are, and I could not be more impressed. And I also would say, as a policy matter, that should be, honestly, should be your standard for who you let into your country. You can't live in Australia unless you love animals. I mean, I don't think you're allowed even to bring cigarettes into your country. You certainly can't bring firearms. Why would you bring people who hate animals or who don't respect them or who eat endangered animals for fun? Like, no. I'm serious. I'm actually not kidding at all. You should make that your standard because above all, you want to keep your country decent. And that is the measure of decency. And you have a right to do that. You have a right to observe your national character, particularly if your national character is good, which yours is. It is good. That's exactly right. And what's so interesting, you know, of all the countries being targeted for destruction, which is, you know, the entire English-speaking world, I mean, that's obviously true. You know, there's a case to be made against some of those countries. I mean, they sort of did bad things in the past. No one currently living, but you can look at the history of certain countries. I'm not pointing out any in particular, Great Britain, but, you know, you could say, well, you know, we're wrecking the country because of the sins of its ancestors. What exactly were your sins? I think you guys got sent here. By the way, everyone.
All right, I'm back. I was on the phone and crazy call, but now I'm back.
I asked when I was like, why were your ancestors sent here? It's always the same answer. You know what it is? Stealing a loaf of bread. I don't believe that for a second, by the way. I just don't believe that. It was armed robbery in every case, but it's like, oh, stealing a loaf of bread. Yeah, okay, right. But anyway, not only did you not do anything wrong, this was the prison that you turned into paradise. You have nothing to apologize for at all. And yet, at every turn, they're making you apologize. I have never seen a society more under attack than the one you're living in now, and for less justification. Every time a commercial airline lands, every time any kind of ceremony opens, they send you the message that you're on someone else's land. And I'm thinking to myself, look, and this is no slight against the people they're talking about at all, but it's, I don't know, it's Australian land, and you're all Australians. And, you know, I guess my first question is, why would you ever put up with that? And that's not a question that I can answer because I'm not Australian. I didn't hear what you said, but I think I agree with you.
All right, I'm going to block the video. I'm going to stop the video because I got blocked by YouTube. This is TCN content and not allowed. So we're going to stop right there. And thank you for joining me. My name is Noel, better than MS, here at verbalonlife, live streaming through fisticuffs, politics. Just trying to get the word out and trying to keep talking. I was on the phone with my ex-wife because she got issues and she wanted some help. So that's why I stopped talking and I had the thing on mute. But again, we're up to 251 subscribers. If you like the stream, go ahead and subscribe. See you guys on the next video. Peace. And it's so sad that I got blocked.
Verbal or life.